Quickly go across to Siddhant also. Siddhant, as Pallavi just highlighted the fact that the US president is already airborne. He's in fact departed for Vietnam. Before we look ahead to his Vietnam visit, let's also talk about how fruitful his India visit has been. Take us through what have been the key takeaways of the US president's presence in India bilaterally and in terms of his multilateral presence as well.
Well, both ways, Akanksha. Even bilaterally, he took bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Modi at 7 LKM, and perhaps there was a lengthy release which came from White House, confirming the development, at the same time saying that most of the issues on agenda were reviewed, fast tracked, and perhaps both the leaders appreciated the work of working groups and consultation groups. So that is for the bilateral commitments. Now, when it comes to multilateral commitments, then Biden did attend first 2 sessions of the G20 summit, and perhaps the first 2 sessions were the main sessions where consensus was to be built, and America has played a very significant, or perhaps important role in building consensus, because we were getting this hint from Americans that Ukraine is going to be on the agenda. Perhaps Ukraine was on agenda, but the kind of language which has been used in the draft, it looks like that the G7 countries, including America, has taken a step back. They may say this, that they have given commitment for the grain initiative, Ukrainian grain, but since Ukraine is not satisfied with the language of the draft, then it is also a fact that the G7 nations have taken a step back. So by helping India to build consensus is also a positive role that America has played. But last and the most important one is sitting or perhaps sharing stage with Mohammed bin Salman. So this was long-standing, and perhaps a lot of people were expecting both leaders to come together. Now, when and where was the big question. How and when also, how was also the question, because none of these leaders were ready to ask for meeting from each other, and there is this sense and understanding that Biden doesn't like Salman and Salman doesn't like Biden. But this also happened in India, and perhaps that was that became start for US to again start re-engaging the countries from the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, UAE, those who have been USA's old alliance partners in the Gulf. So that is also kind of an achievement for American diplomacy, that Biden and Salman came together in a very neutral manner. Even the handshake also happened in presence of Prime Minister Modi. So the liberal liberal thoughts which Biden represents in America. So even they won't have problem if Biden is doing it in India. There has not been any bilateral engagement, but he did it.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm also. Let me also take my next question from Professor Brahmachalani, who continues to stay with us. Professor, when we talk about Biden's visit, how fruitful has it been for Joe Biden himself, for a US that was looking to fill in that hole that's been left behind by the Chinese president and the Russian president? A lot of reports were already indicating how he wants to capitalize on that absence. Do you think he's managed to capitalize?
Biden skipped the ASEAN summit that was held in Jakarta, Indonesia. Prime Minister Modi was present, but Biden decided to skip. So the G20 summit meeting in New Delhi became even more important for American diplomacy, because the G20 brings together world leaders. So Biden's presence in New Delhi was important, and he made full use of his presence in New Delhi by holding bilateral meetings with several other world leaders. He didn't have so many formal bilateral meetings as Modi had. Modi had more than 15 bilateral meetings on the margins of the G20 summit. Biden's interactions with other world leaders were quite informal. He didn't have any formal bilateral meeting other than with Prime Minister Modi. But he made full use of his stay in New Delhi to engage with a host of world leaders. The fact is that he had gone on a pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia in July last year, where he had detailed conversations with Crown Prince Salman. But now the fact that Saudi Arabia has been brought on board along with the UAE to help build this transportation corridor from India to
Professor,
Europe.
that is
the
what
Middle East.
catches my curiosity. Professor, I want to ask you, do you think India's sort of had a role to play in this new turn of relationship that we see between the US President and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman?
Well, actually, I don't think India played any critical role because the fact that Biden went to Saudi Arabia last July 2022, clearly underscored the fact that America was trying to mend fences with Saudi Arabia. Going to Saudi Arabia last year, just after Biden had declared that the world faced a struggle between freedom and autocracy, that really brought a lot of criticism at home, because that showed Biden's hypocrisy, as critics charged that Biden was, was singing one line on the war in Ukraine, but trying to reach out and build a personal bond with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who was accused of being involved in a gruesome murder. So, and today he's on his way to Vietnam, which is a communist-ruled country. Again, it undercuts Biden's message that the world is facing a struggle between freedom and autocracy. The fact is that when you divide the world between, in these two camps, you constrict your diplomatic options. Vietnam is a very critical country in the Indo-Pacific region. And if the US is to build a close partnership with Vietnam, it will help advance America's Indo-Pacific strategy. That is the reason why Biden is now on his way to Hanoi. But interestingly, his plane is overflying Myanmar right now. He's going from New Delhi to Vietnam through the Myanmar airspace. Myanmar is a country that Biden has imposed sanctions on, in fact, very heavy sanctions on Myanmar, which is a critical neighbor of India. By imposing severe sanctions on Myanmar, he has made a bad situation worse in Myanmar. He has created cross-border impacts, including in India. For example, the Manipur ethnic conflict has been exacerbated by the refugee influx from Myanmar. So here is an interesting thing that, he's going to communist-ruled Vietnam, overflying the airspace of a sanctions-hit Myanmar, clearly shows that his simplistic depiction of the world as, as a struggle between democracy and autocracy, that description of his of last year certainly doesn't hold water today.
Absolutely.